In this video, we're going to install MySQL Server on our computers, and the reason why we're doing that is because we're going to use it to maintain the data space aspect of our web server. And before we get to it, I just want to explain again how all of this is working. So basically what we've done so far is we've written some code, and as the browser tries to visit our website, the web server will look for the file that the browser has requested. The file may contain some PHP code, and if it does, it'll be processed. In our case, our PHP code involves a loop, which loops over an array of users and then just reproduces a div, but places the username and the user's email inside of it. And then afterwards, it returns a HTML document with all of our users inside of it. Then the web server takes that HTML document and sends it back to the browser. Now, what we haven't incorporated yet is the whole database aspect of it. And the database is very important because that's where it's going to store all the information related to the users who have registered for our website. Every time a user registers, we'll have another row that's added to our users table, for example. And what we'll eventually have to do is write some PHP code that will interact with the database, gather all the users, and then take the result and place it inside of the HTML. But before we can do that, we need to install MySQL Server. Now to install MySQL, let's just go to Google and type in MySQL download. I'm using Windows, but if you're a Mac or Linux, you can install it as well. Just click that. I'll click on the first link. And now I've got two options. I can either choose this 18 megabyte file or this 400 megabyte file. I downloaded the 400 megabyte file because it pretty much included everything that I needed. This 18 megabyte file is a web installer, so once you start going through the process, it'll end up having to download some of this stuff anyway. So I just downloaded this one. Once you've downloaded it, go into your downloads folder and open up the file. This might take like a minute or so just to load up. And once it's loaded up, you should see something like this. Now there are lots of different options here. Now it's up to you what you want to install, but you probably don't know what a lot of these things are. Even I don't know what some of these things are, but I do know what I want. I want MySQL Server to be installed. I want MySQL Workbench to be installed. This is a neat program that helps us look at our database. And I think that's basically it. So I'm going to go for a custom install. I'll click next. And now I can choose exactly what I want to be installed. So I'll go into the MySQL Server section. I'll go for the highest version, 8.0, and I'll just click on one and press this little arrow to move across to the things that I want to install list. Okay, there's MySQL Server done. Let's go into the applications. I want to install MySQL Workbench. So I will do the same thing, click the little arrow, now it's there. I'll install MySQL shell as well, in case we ever need to use it. Done. And if you plan on using MySQL with other kinds of programs you might make, you can install these different connectors. And this basically just helps those languages connect to your MySQL database. So you just go through here and choose a connector you want and just install it. For example, on my computer, I've installed it for Python because I have Python scripts which interact with my database. You can do it with whatever you want here. All right, now that we've got what we mainly need selected, let's click Next and execute. Cool, now once everything's complete, let's click Next, Next, and now it's going to ask us to configure MySQL Server. I'm just going to install the standalone MySQL Server. Okay, now it's asking us a few other questions here about how we'd like to set it up. Okay, we are not going to be setting it up as a server or a dedicated server. It's just a development computer. So let's choose that. All of these default things should be completely fine. We could show the advanced options if we want to have a look later. Let's keep them open. Okay, this is very important. Since we're just installing this on our own computer, We don't really need to use this strong password business. We can just go for the old-fashioned method. In general, it's not important. The database that we're going to be using on our computer isn't going to install anything important. It's just going to be sample data that we use just while we develop our larger projects. Of course, if we were installing MySQL on a proper web server, we would have to make sure that everything we do is as secure as possible. Okay, this is important, and you have to make sure that you remember what you do here. Just choose a password. Now, this is the password that we're going to need for us to be able to log into the MySQL server, so to log into our database. So just pick any password you want. And remember, this isn't something that you'll use online. This is just something that you'll use to log in your database, which probably doesn't have anything important. Of course, you should use a strong password, but I've just used like a silly standard password. Okay, once you choose a password, just click next. Now there are a few more questions here. It asks you to set up a MySQL server as a Windows service. Now it's very useful to check this box because you can basically turn on and off the MySQL server just using your task manager. This is very, very useful. Make sure you check this box. Okay, you can optionally start the server at system startup. If you're only going to be using this maybe once a week or once a month, then you might not have to check that box. And what will happen is if you want to start the server, you have to go into your task manager, click on the services tab, and then make sure you start the server. Okay, cool. Let's keep going. Next, here are just some places where we're going to be pasting all of the error logs and such. The default ones should be fine. Here are the advanced options. There's nothing really that important here. It says table names case, lowercase. So basically this is just going to force all of the table names to have lowercase letters. We'll just keep it with the default there. Cool, now it's ready to configure our server. Let's click execute. And now we can click finish. Okay, now it looks like it's finished configuring. Let's click next again, finish, and then we are done. Okay, so after you press finished, you'll notice that MySQL Workbench would have opened and also MySQL Show. Let's just get out of the show. We won't use that right now, but let's look at the Workbench. You'll see that it's automatically noticed that we have our server installed on our computer. So if you want to open it up, just double click it and you'll have to type in exactly the same password that you used during setup earlier. Okay, if you want to save the password so you don't have to type it again, just check save in Vault and then OK. And this will send you to MySQL Workbench. Now, my page might look a little different to yours, but that's because I added in a temporary table just to make sure that it was all working. But we'll talk a little bit more about how to use MySQL Workbench in the next video. Now, before we finish, there's one more thing that you need to do. You need to go back into your PHP folder. So go into your computer, C drive PHP, wherever you installed PHP in the early videos, and you'll see that there are two files here that say php.ini. One of them says development and one of them says production. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take all of the information inside of this development file and use it to make another php.ini file. And basically what these files contain are all of the settings for our PHP installation. So right click on the development one and click edit with Notepad++, and then go file, save as, wherever it is, save as, and keep it in here except write php.ini, just .ini. Don't do ini dash production or development, just php.ini. Click save. All right, and now we have the file. We just need to make one change to this file so that we activate MySQL. So we need to tell PHP to use a special set of code that will allow us to talk with or interact with the MySQL server we just installed. So to do that, just do Control F and search for MySQL I. It's important you put a little I at the end there, and then click Find Next, again, and this is the line of code that we're going to change. You can see that these are all of the PHP extensions, and the little semicolon here is basically commenting them out. And if we uncomment them, we activate that extension. So in this case, I've just removed the semicolon from the beginning of the extension MySQLi. Now, there are lots of ways we can interact with the database. There's lots of different extensions we can use. So for example, you can see there's PDO MySQL. This is a very popular one. But for us, we're just going to stick with MySQLi because it's very simple. Okay, so once that is done, make sure you save the file. And now we have activated MySQL within PHP. Cool. In the next video, we'll spend more time working with MySQL Workbench. I'll show you how to use it, so how you can add in databases or schemas. And then inside of each database, I'll show you how to add a table, and then we can maybe do some basic SQL to understand how we can extract data from the table or change data inside of the table.